So thanks for joining, guys. And we're going to go through the effective task management training. Let me get my screen shared. Cool. All right, so to give a quick intro, so this was the final product of a outline that I've been compiling over the last few years of my personal productivity tips, just things that I tell people, and I'm like, I should really put this down in a training. So I finally did one day, and this is what it came out to be, as effective task management. It consolidates a lot of best practices I found from a lot of places and that I've used personally, and really it trains people on how to be an excellent executor. This has nothing to do with management of like people management or general management. This is about how you manage your own execution as an executor, a frontline person. So, effective task management. So, task management topics to cover. So we're going to talk about task management versus project management, how they're different, best practices for task management, tools comparison for how to do task management, miscellaneous tips and tricks that didn't fit anywhere else but they're important to know, and then some hands-on training to be able to go over and see how well you guys have caught on to what I've been training. Cool. So, by the way, if you guys have questions or comments as we go through the training, just bring them up as we go as opposed to hold them off to the end. That's the way I like to roll. So, what is project management and what is task management? So first of all, project management is a discipline for how to manage the work that needs to be done. Task management is a skill for how to execute the work that needs to be done. So if we want to dive in a little bit more into project management, the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to the project activities to meet project requirements is what the PMBOK says project management is. And that's like the manual for project management, the project management body of knowledge from the PMI Institute. If I was to summarize it, I would basically say project management is a high-level management technique to ensure that tasks are done within the proper time, budget, and quality. So project management is a discipline that makes sure that work gets done, whereas task management is the process by which a person captures, organizes, prioritizes, and then executes on the work that they need to do each day. Managing the individual tasks that need to be done as a resource on a project team or for other miscellaneous work that needs to be done, because we all know that not every task that needs to be done is part of a major project. There's still crap that needs to be done that's just miscellaneous stuff. And that all fits in task management, but the miscellaneous stuff doesn't fit well into project management. So it's just good to be aware of the fact that we're not talking about project management, we're talking about the task management portion. This slide is specifically important when you're talking to project managers so they understand the difference. Okay, so let's talk about...
The difference. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some best practices for getting things done, or the GTD methodology. So let's see here. There we go. This is a video, Brian.
So I was talking with David Allen, author of the book Getting Things Done, about how to be more organized, and he asked me, why do you keep a calendar? Because if I don't, I'll forget where I'm supposed to be and when. That's right. Your head can't handle that complexity, and like the complexity of your calendar, not the complexity of the rest of your life. Your calendar manages maybe 3–4% of your commitments and what you actually need to keep track of. The other 96%, David says, are things like our goals, our projects, our to-do lists, what we need at the store, that phone call we need to make, all these other things we just let our brain, our psyche, try to keep track of. The psyche actually sucks in the system. It'll remind you of stuff that you can't do at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is not very bright. If that was just one thing, that'd be bad enough. But multiply that by about 1,000 and realize this buzz that's going on in everybody's head. So David thinks we need a new system that captures that buzz and quiets your brain. The first step in this system is to get everything written down. So capturing it, that's the first critical step. That is, I've got to identify those things that are potentially meaningful. Otherwise, my psyche is going to go, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, and this little monkey is going to start to talk inside my head. But just writing things down isn't enough, because if you look at most people's to-do lists, you see things like mom or bank, but you have to take it the next step. So now you've got to clarify what's the outcome I'm committed to. And then you say, well, what does doing look like? Where does it happen? So what's the very next action about mom's birthday? What's the very next action about the bank? Is that a phone call to make? Is that a surf the web to find out something? The third thing you need to do is you need to park the result. Otherwise, it goes back in my psyche. The final 2 steps, David says, are to review those lists that you make, those parking lots for your tasks, your projects, and then, of course, to do them. The big secret here about getting things done because it's not really about getting things done. I am now free and clear in my head to let my attention go where it wants to go or where I want to put it. It's about being appropriately engaged with your life. And once you stop trying to keep all of those tasks and projects in your head and you quiet the jabbering monkeys, you'll find that you have increased capacity to think and be creative.
That's an Epipio video that I found on YouTube that really summarized it really well. Have you guys ever heard that jabbering monkey in your head?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Like 100 things you're trying to get done at once.
Uh-huh. It gets a little crazy sometimes. But
You're totally
really,
right. I just sit down and start writing until it's all out of my head, and I'm like, oh, thank you.
Exactly. So when we're talking about the how to do task management, like the guy that everybody quotes is David Allen, the guy that came up with this GTD, this getting things done methodology. He wrote the book on task management, really. So this Epipio guy did an interview with him, and that's kind of a summary of what he talks about. So we're going to go through and understand a little bit more about this GTD methodology. So specifically, he lists out in the video some steps. So we're just going to go through them really quickly. So write it down, clarify, park the results, review the list, and then actually do them. So we're going to spend some time on each of these as we go through the rest of the training. So first of all, writing down, clarifying, and parking the results is all in the same kind of action. It's actually taking the step of writing things down so they get out of our head and doing it clearly. So let's talk about that step first. So you want to create tasks. So here's a best practice. Create tasks as your boss self for your worker self. So clearly describe the tasks so that someone, including your worker self, can do them without having to think about it. Like if you can understand the fact that sometimes you wear different hats, I imagine that you guys here on this call wear lots of different hats. Sometimes the hat is the project manager that knows the high level of what everything needs to get done, and that project manager self is going to be the one, or the boss self is going to be the one that's going to say, this task needs to be done with these specifications by this time frame, and so you write down that task with that much specificity so that when you get to it 3 weeks later and you don't remember what your project manager person was thinking at that time, you can read the task, and just by simply reading it, it's clear enough to be able to execute on without further thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's one great tip that I found. You always want to make sure that you write it well enough that your worker self could do it without thinking about it.
And it's
Number two.
When you look at it later, you don't have to try and think about what you're trying to say to yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so write down tasks using specific action verbs. So some examples should be create, or schedule, or update, or read, or review, or send, or install, or whatever the case may be. Every task should always start with a specific action verb at the beginning. And number three, break tasks down to the next actionable item. It's a good way to write down and clarify things when you park the results. So some bad example would be clean up the garden. Okay, clean up garden is not a task. Clean up garden is a massive project. A good example would be instead, pick up trailer from Steve so that I can start working on putting stuff into said trailer to eventually clean up my garden. But that's just the first task that needs to be done. And guess what happens when I finish pick up trailer from Steve? The next action item would be, load stuff from garden into trailer. And you just kind of continue with the actions that need to be done in your task list. Now, from a project management perspective, you're going to have a cleanup garden project. And it's going to have pick up trailer from Steve, load stuff into trailer, take trailer to dump, blah, 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 blah. All of these different tasks. But on your task list, you just put what you need to be working on, the first action at the time. And so basically, whenever you're doing something that's a massive thing that you got to take care of, just think about what's my first action and put that one down as the action task. And then you just got to make sure if it's a single task as part of a big overarching project, then when you finish that task, make sure that you ask yourself, okay, what's my next action? And you just write that one down. And that way you can take care of things small chunks at a time instead of having these massive overwhelming tasks like clean up garden that really don't ever get done because it's so overwhelming that really the first task is think about my first action. But because I'm trying to clean up the garden, it's this huge thing, it becomes mentally overwhelming and you never start it in the first place. So those are some good best practices in terms of how to write down, clarify, and park your results, how to write your tasks. We're going to get into some more details about that later in the hands-on part. So we'll get to also where to write things down in the tools comparison section, so don't worry about that one either. Okay, so let's talk about the next one, which is review and also prioritize the list. So a few best practices here. Schedule and hold a personal daily prioritization meeting to review your task list at the beginning of every day before checking your email so that you can prioritize your tasks. This is a really key aspect that I've heard in lots of different areas, and I agree with wholeheartedly. If you want to make sure that you get the right tasks done each day, you've got to make sure that you start out your day looking at what needs to be done, planning it out before you get lost in the minutia, the whirlwind of emails or things that need to be done. It's hard sometimes to make the time to do a personal daily prioritization meeting, but it absolutely makes for a difference in being able to make sure that you execute the right things and get things done. That's definitely a best practice. Personal daily prioritization meeting, first thing. So in going through some details about this meeting, number one would be you read through the full list before you start your work. Don't get distracted into just working on something. Just read through without executing on anything yet. Number two, update the list. So you want to complete things that were marked off from the previous day that you didn't get to, reprioritize things that you realize now really aren't a big priority right now, maybe they do it tomorrow, postpone things that need to go off to tomorrow, and then highlight things. It's like, oh yeah, I really got to make sure and get this thing done today, so you'd highlight it. So you read through, you update. Number three is you schedule time to complete the most important tasks. If there's something that you absolutely have to make sure that you get done today, carve out some time on your calendar and put it on there and say, I'm going to do X such and such task. You know, today, personally, I'm going to be consolidate all the functional specifications to deliver to the IT developers and create IT projects for, so that I can talk to my project manager that's going to be helping me with them this next week. So that's my important task that I have scheduled on my calendar for this afternoon, for example. And then finally, after you've done all that stuff, then you start executing on your prioritized tasks in priority order. And that way you can make sure you get the most important things done.
And that way you're not stressing about getting the most important thing done. That's what's nice.
Yeah, exactly. Or that way you're not cleaning out a whole bunch of the small things, and then all of a sudden you get to the end of the day and you don't have enough time, and so you have to do the most important thing, and you end up doing it at home. And I've done that many times
all day about the most important thing that you needed to do.
Exactly. So you just prioritize at the beginning of the day, make sure that you identify it, schedule time for it, and then just do what you've prioritized yourself for. So here's an interesting note. Having tasks documented and prioritized is better than actually finishing all of the tasks you've documented. For example, I heard this quote from Marissa Mayer, changed my outlook forever. So she's the CEO of Yahoo, and she had an article that I read on My Factor called Marissa Mayer Explains Why Having To-Dos is Better Than Finishing Them. And I was like, what? And this is what she said. Look, I just make a to-do list every day in priority order from the most important to the least important, and I celebrate the fact that I'd never get to the bottom of it. Because if I did, I would have spent a bunch of time doing relatively unimportant things. It's an amazing quote.
Yeah.
It really frees you from feeling like you have to finish everything you set out for every day. And at the end of the day, as long as you do it in priority order, you can say, I got the most important things done. That was awesome. And instead of feeling bad about the things little on your priority list, you can feel good about the fact that I know that I'm doing important things, and I'm not getting lost in unimportant things. And the unimportant things will still be there tomorrow. And guess what? Sometimes the unimportant things at some point turn into the important things. You can only hold off on, signing up for your benefits for so long before it becomes the important thing, or you're not going to have benefits for the next year.
Right.
So it's a good reason. I just like the philosophy that if you do things in priority order, you can celebrate the fact that you'll never get everything done, because you'll always be celebrating the fact that you get the most important things done. And that's a good way to look at it.
It's not about getting it all marked off. It's about prioritizing it so that the most important things get done first.
Exactly.
That's sweet. This lady's smart.
Yeah, she totally is. Task management best practices. So let's get to the fifth step, which is to do them. Just do it. There's really not a whole lot of science to execution once you get there. It's about how you prepare for, plan for, prioritize for. But once you actually get to the last step, you just do what needs to be done. There's not a whole lot to say there. So let's jump into tools comparison. Like, what sort of tools or systems are out there to help with being able to manage the task that you have? And I've kind of consolidated the kind of life cycle that most people go through with trying to figure out how to do effective task management. So as it talks about in the David Allen video, everybody starts out with your brain, which is the first tool that everybody ever uses. The problem with the brain is you can't write down tasks. There's just a jabbering monkey bobbing around in your head, randomly throwing thoughts of things that need to get done at the forefront of your mind and driving you crazy and keeping you up late at night. The psyche sucks as a system for task management, honestly. So most people do the next thing, which is the system number 2 is a paper notebook. The nice thing about a paper notebook is at least you can write things down easily. You have something come to your mind, you take a pen out, and you write it on a piece of paper. That's where most people start. The problem with a paper notebook is you can't easily roll tasks to the next day, and you can't change the sort order of the task. The way that you write it down is kind of the way that it's listed. So with the advent of the computer, people were able to graduate to a next level of task management with something like a digital notepad. And there's lots of ways to describe what a digital notepad, but I'm going to talk about just like the Notepad app in Windows. And with that one, you can easily write tasks down, you can roll tasks to the next day, you can change the sort order of those tasks. It's a much better way to be able to do things than just paper, because it's got some capabilities that technology enables. But then we get to really advanced task management systems that are actually built to be able to facilitate the process of task management. And I'm going to talk about 2, and these are 2 specific ones that we kind of use off and on at inContact. So I did those in the comparison. And that's Checkvist and Smartsheet, both of which allow you to easily write down tasks, roll them to the next day, change the sort order, that kind of stuff. But they add a whole bunch of different capabilities. So both of them, Checkvist and Smartsheet, can are virtually accessible lists, as in if you're on your phone, you can pull it up. You don't have to be on your computer where your notepad file, text file was saved. There's also keyboard shortcuts for Checkvist that allow you to do things like sort via the keyboard, or change the due dates via the keyboard, or change the colors via the keyboard. So you can go much faster in working with and working on and changing the priority of your task list. Smartsheet doesn't do that as well, but Smartsheet does have better integrated project management. So if you decide to use something like Smartsheet for your task management system, you've already got all of your projects built in there, and Checkvist doesn't necessarily have any sort of integration with project management. It's just a standalone task management system. But back to Checkvist, one of the strengths it has is that you can have a do tasks view for multiple lists. So you can put lots of different lists in lots of different areas, like the established knowledge management program list, and the build reporting and dashboards list, and the KCS implementation list, and all these other lists that I'm working on currently. And I just have a consolidated due tasks view that shows me just the tasks that are due for me to work on today from all of these different lists. And that way I can make sure that I'm covering my bases on all of my different project areas all in one place at the same time at the beginning of the day. And that's something that Checkvist does really well. Smartsheet has some of those capabilities, but not really. And then back to Smartsheet, one of the advantages is...
Go ahead. Sorry, Ryan.
No, say it again, bud.
I was just saying that Checkvist seems like it's really good for getting tasks done, and Smartsheet would be really good for project management, it sounds.
Dude, you're reading ahead in my slides, but yes, that's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, my bad, dude.
No, you're fine. But back to the Smartsheet, you can assign tasks to other people. Checkvist has some sort of smart capabilities, but it's not really as good for doing group collaboration of tasks. That's really where project management software comes in better, like Smartsheet. Right. So if we boil all of this down, like Josh just said, Checkvist is better at task management, and Smartsheet is better at project management. So if you're looking for one tool or the other, those are the two tools that I've found that seem to work best because of their fortes in both of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some other noteworthy task management systems of note. Some people use OneNote. Some people use Outlook tasks. Some people use AnyDo, which is like an Android or iPhone or web app. And there's also Wunderlist that has those same things. Personally, for me, I actually use Checkvist for my work task management. I also use Smartsheet for my project management. And when necessary, when I'm scheduling projects, I will take the tasks that need to be done and then copy them over to my Checkvist list so that my project manager self can manage things at the project level, and my executor task management self can manage things in the Checkvist list. And then I can just kind of keep things synchronized throughout the week as I go. And for my personal use, I actually use AnyDo for my personal stuff, like honeydews and stuff around the house that just needs to be done. And then I actually use Wunderlist for my calling, actually, for Ward Mission Leader, to be able to figure out what sort of specific tasks need to be done as it relates to that, second job that I've got. But needless to say, the next slide.
Ryan.
Yeah, AnyDo's cool. Except for then when they started charging for the AnyDo moment in the morning, I got pissed and I don't use it as much, but whatever. Next thing, email as a task management tool. Email is not an effective task management tool, pound fist on the ground, exclamation mark. And the reason I would say that is your list is made up of email subjects, not task names. So you don't know what needs to be done because you're reading the subject of a communication, and it really doesn't give you that verb first that tells you what exactly needs to be done with enough details for your worker self to get it done. It is not a task. It's an email. Number two, you can't manually sort emails to prioritize them. So if there's something specifically that needs to be done, there's no way to sort them or organize them in a way that indicates priority. And then number three, anyone can update your list by simply emailing you. So you're trying to execute on your task list, somebody sends you an email, and all of a sudden your task has been focused on handling that email. Like, email is not an effective task management tool. And I know that a lot of people experiment with trying to do task management by keeping your inbox clean. And I would highly recommend against it. Email is a good communications tool, but tasks should be taken from emails and entered into a real task management tool where you can follow task management best practices. So that's my rant on email as a task management tool. So here's the question. How many of you guys today are using email as your task management tool?
I have a friend who I know uses it.
Yeah, I'd probably use email as my task management system. Like, if I need to I'll read my email, and if I need to do something with it, I just leave it unread, so it kind of just bugs me until I've read it.
Yeah, and for my email communication, I actually use that same technique, and that's a totally separate training about effective email communication. But yeah, having an email that still needs to be something done with it, leaving it unread, helps me know that I still haven't really read through it and worked in and addressed it, but I don't use it as a task management system for that matter. So anyway, all that said, find a task management tool that fits you. So find a tool that works for you. How you apply the best practices is more important than which tool you actually use. And try out a better tool next time that you have a chance on your next project, on your next quarter, on your next year, on your next job, whatever the case may be. Just find a way the next time you have a chance to try and upgrade to something a little better. If you're using paper, try a notepad. If you're using a notepad, try Checkvist. If you're using email, stop and try something else. But that's the point is, really the best practices are what make task management effective, and it's not really as much about the tool. The only thing that's problematic about email is it just doesn't facilitate well doing the best practices, which is why I don't recommend it as a tool. Okay, that all said, any other questions about tools or what kind of tools you should use, or any other tools that you guys have used that you've seen work really well?
What about what's connectable to mobile apps? I mean, looking at it saying taking everything with you on your phone versus at work, is there a difference between Checkvist and some of the other ones that you've worked with that are more accessible for mobile phones?
Great question. Almost all of the ones that I listed on this slide, let's go back to that real quick. Almost all of these have accessibility from your mobile phone. I think the only one that's not is Outlook tasks, and that just depends on whether or not you have a web server like an Outlook Web Access server. But I know OneNote, there is an app for the phone that you can see stuff that you put in OneNote. AnyDo and Wunderlist have actual native apps. Smartsheet has a native app. Checkvist actually doesn't have a native app, although it's in development from what I hear. They do have a web page that lets you do basic things like read your tasks and like swipe them off if they're done, but it's not as intuitive to like make changes to it, which I actually find is an advantage. And I'll talk about it a little bit later on, in that I like the fact that the web interface is more limited because it allows me to review my task list without managing or working on it too much at the beginning of the day, and I'll get into that later. But yes, all of these things do have capabilities to allow you to access them in multiple locations, which is really one of the key points. Virtual accessible lists or web access is one of the things that these kind of tools have.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments, tools you guys have used?
No, not so far.
Sounds good.
I was wondering, Ryan, is there any tool that you recommend like that integrates really well with Google?
You could use a Google Doc, but it's really just a digital notepad.
Right.
It's not really a task management system, but it is a form of a digital notepad. There is Google Tasks, which is Google's own attempt at doing task management, and they have literally not made any advancements or updates to that tool for like 10 years or something like that. I used to use it for a while, but AnyDo is much better at task management than Google Tasks is. I always hoped that Google would come up with a better task management system, but it's just never been a development priority. And there's plenty of other systems out there that do it well. So,
right. I get what you're saying.
So does that answer your question, or are there other types of integrations you're talking about? Because integration is a loaded, very complicated question sometimes.
Right. Well, integration is obviously the direction you've got to go if you use Google for anything, but I was just wondering what your thoughts were. Because I've been using AnyDo and then kind of keeping Google as my like just calendar and project management a little bit.
Yeah, and I do the same thing too. For my personal life, I use my Google Calendar to be able to coordinate and schedule everything. And there's no direct coordination between the two. I know that if you use AnyDo, AnyDo, the company, has a calendar app that also works on Android, so that you can look at your Google Calendar and your AnyDo tasks in the same app. So there is that kind of integration, if that's what you're talking about. That's the only task management system that I know that has that kind of integration, though.
Well, that's cool that I'm already using it, so maybe I'll have to get that out. Thanks for the heads up.
Yep, not a bad idea. I actually personally use Business Calendar on Android because I never really liked the way that the integration between tasks and calendar worked, mostly just because my tasks in my AnyDo list are mostly low priority, so they don't need to be done. So, yeah, for what it's worth.
Cool.
All right, so let's go over some miscellaneous tips and tricks, unless there's any other things you guys wanted to touch on. So, number one, assign due dates for when you plan to have a task done, or at least when you plan to start working on it. This can be used to then display a due tasks view with the tasks that should be completed on specific days. So, for example, if I added a task here, add quarterly goals into Intelligence, which is our performance management system, by Friday, end of day. And then I'm going to schedule that on Thursday, January 8th, so that I can make sure that I look at it on Thursday and realize, oh yeah, I need to get my goals in before Friday. And I can either prioritize it Thursday, or if I don't finish it on Thursday, I come in Friday morning and I'm like, oh yeah, it's due today. I got to take care of this. So it's a great way to be able to make sure that you get the tasks done in the right times by putting due dates on your tasks for either when they need to be done, or at least when you're going to start working on them to make sure that they are done by the due date. Number two, color code your tasks to represent different tasks or types of tasks. For example, in Checkvist, the way I use it, black is low priority, red is regular priority, highlighted red is high priority, blue is follow-up, green is meetings to attend, etc. There's lots of different ways to like color code or mark your tasks. Some systems use like exclamation marks or double exclamation marks or whatever. Just find some way to be able to differentiate priority in your system, whether that be color or some other way. So, for example, here's on screen, meeting, follow-up, low priority, regular priority, high priority. That's what I do. Number three, create recurring tasks by putting a star in front of the task name and a date time at the end. This works for reoccurring meetings or activities. When a recurring task is completed, instead of marking it off, simply move it to the next reoccurring date. So, for example, submit expense report into Concur for up to the 26th of the month. And I've got that assigned as January 26th. And I can tell this is a reoccurring task because I put a star at the beginning of it. So when it comes up on the 26th, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do my expense reports, and then I get it done. And then the next day when I come in and look at my task list, I'm like, oh yeah, I already finished that one. So instead of hitting spacebar and marking it off in Checkvist, I just hit DD, and it brings up a due date, and I put it to February 26th. And then when it comes around in February, I'll get it done then too. So that's a way to do reoccurring tasks in a task management system. Number four, create follow-up tasks for when to check in with other people to complete their tasks. For example, follow up with John Smith for final approval on Friday, January 9th. it's not necessarily something I need to do, but it's something I need to follow up with somebody else to make sure that they get it done. This is kind of like project management by following up, or management by walking around kind of stuff. But your task is just to do the follow-up, to ping somebody, to follow up with them, make sure they get stuff done. And that's good for project managers or for people in general. If there's a task for somebody that you need to check up with somebody at a certain time, just create a follow-up task. Okay, tips and tricks continued. Number 5, use separate task management tools for business tasks, like I use Checkvist, and personal tasks, like I use AnyDo. This helps you to focus on the right tasks at the right times during the day. People wear different hats, and at different times you have different responsibilities, so keep your tasks separate. So you have your business tasks and your personal tasks, you keep them separate. Number 6, create multiple task lists that correspond to your projects or responsibilities, and one miscellaneous task list. That's important. It's important to then, it is then helpful to find a system that can aggregate multiple lists into one view, like the Checkvist Do Tasks view. So for example, if we have an inContact tasks list, and that's kind of what I just use as my miscellaneous tasks. So there's something at work that needs to be done, but it doesn't really fit in the Acme Corp task list, or the training strategy task list, or the decorate for Halloween task list, or whatever the case may be, whatever your projects are that you're working on. So you have one miscellaneous one for anything that comes up that doesn't fit anywhere else, and then you've got your specific projects for other places. So, and then let me show you really quickly what this Checkvist Do Tasks view is. I talk about this thing all the time, but it's good to be able to see at this point in the training what that looks like. Brian, I'll try and describe it for you since you can't see. So it brings up the Checkvist list, and I'm already logged in here, so if I just hit this link, it'll log me in direct. So this is Checkvist, and of course it's loading slow because I'm on a training. There we go. So I can see my due tasks, and I've got some overdue tasks, and I've got some tasks that are due today, and some tasks that are due later. So if I was to come in and do my task review, and I intentionally didn't do it today so that I could do it with you guys on this call, I could look up and say, pull up the reporting request for Jeff to send to the differences between KB. Yep, I still need to do that today, so I'm going to hit TD and say, yep, I'm doing that today. Pull in the tasks from the OneNotes. I got to still do that today. Identify next steps for the KTS implementation. Do that today. Provide Jeff information about additional headcount. I'm not doing that today. I'm doing that next week in our next meeting on the 31st. Knowledge Management Team Weekly Meeting. We did that yesterday, so I'm going to move. See, this is a reoccurring task because it's got a star on it, and it happens Thursdays from 3 to 5, so I'm going to hit DD, move it to next Thursday on the 30th. And then one-on-one with Remington did that as well, so I'll hit DD, and I can actually just type in the letter or the numbers 30, and then hit enter, and it'll reassign it to the 30th and then send it out. And then the next one, watch open enrollment presentation recording. Yeah, I'm doing that today too because I didn't get to it yesterday. And then finalize my Q3 intelligence goals with Jeff. Yeah, I tried, but Jeff didn't show up to the meeting, so I'm going to move that off until, let's say, probably Monday, because he's going to be back in there Monday. And now I can look at, these are my due tasks for today. So follow up with Scott about reporting in IT projects, cases, Salesforce attached. I'm actually going to wait on that until Monday. And then these are all the other tasks that I rolled over from yesterday that still need to be done today. With the new one, schedule a meeting in August with Milena and Andy to determine project owner. Yeah, I'll see if I can get that done today. It's not high priority. And then weekly one-on-one with Brian. I still need to figure that out with Jeff next week. And then watch open enrollment. So that's my tasks for today. And I've actually recently, in the last month or two, updated my task management so that anything is green is highest priority, blue is next highest priority, red is high priority, red highlighted is regular priority, is next highest priority, red not highlighted is normal priority, and then green are just meetings. And I did actually finish that meeting today and push it off until next week for Friday. So that's the advantage of a do task system, is I have, these massive task lists of established knowledge management program and the KCS implementation and the user adoption scorecards and my miscellaneous inContact task list where my open enrollment each year goes. And then I can kind of keep track of everything going on and also see stuff that needs to happen later. And it will just kind of prioritize them for me according to when things need to be done. And then if I wanted to, I could look at any one specific list. So let's pull up these two lists, established knowledge management program. So I can see all these different tasks that need to be done, archive tasks that I've taken care of, different things that need to be done in different colors and different areas. And then I could go back and click on the link for the KTS implementation. So this is the stuff that needs to be done on this project. And I can see recurring tasks up here, other associated task lists that I've got linked, archived tasks, tasks that need to be done by chronological order, so I can just see what needs to be done when. And then a whole bunch of other miscellaneous tasks that are low priority that I hopefully will get to someday. And I celebrate the fact that I'm not doing lots of unimportant tasks all the time. So that's really the Checkvist do tasks view. Any questions on that?
No, I think you're good.
No question. It seems awesome.
Yep, it's an awesome system. I love it.
It seems really effective at keeping you like on task. It's impressive.
Incredibly effective. I have never missed a quarterly goal for the last 3 years using this system. And that's a feat in my world. So anyway, number 7, capture tasks in the workflow, recognizing and adding tasks to your task list as soon as you realize that there will be work for you to do. For example, you read an email, capture the task in the workflow. Sitting in a meeting and realizing that there's something you need to do, write it into your email. Or write it into your meeting notes and then take your meeting notes and write it into your task. Not write it into an email. Sorry about that. Or finally, setting quarterly goals. So if you set quarterly goals that mean I have to have these 4 things done by the end of the quarter, then I'm immediately going to write 4 tasks with specific due dates that I'm going to start looking at them to make sure that I've got everything squared away so that by the time the end of the quarter comes, I'm already prepped and ready to make sure those goals are met. So capturing your tasks in the workflow is a great strategy. So figure out what needs to be done and then write it down when you realize it in the workflow. Number 8, automatically open, so for example, using Windows Task Scheduler, your task list. So I open my Checkvist Do Tasks view, which is my daily view, at the beginning of each day. Or your Any Do Task list right after work using Tasker, which is what I do, to help you remember to review your lists each day. So for example, this is the Windows Task Scheduler that you could create and schedule to pop up the Checkvist Do Tasks view. So at the beginning of every day, this is the first thing you see when you log in on your computer is the stuff that needs to be done. All right, so that's the basics on the tips and tricks and best practices that I've seen. Let's do some hands-on and just kind of see how well you guys have learned what we've gone over. So actually, first of all, before we do the hands-on practice, we're going to look at my favorite task management tool, Checkvist. And I did the live demo early. Sorry about that. Multiple task lists. It's got easy keyboard shortcuts and a consolidated do tasks view, which is really the kicker that makes this one shine. So you guys want to see anything else about Checkvist, or are we good with what we've gone over?
I think we're good on that one.
Sounds good. I haven't done this training for a while, so I forgot the order there. And then you can click here to register for Checkvist if you want to try that one out.
Free software?
Okay. I'm sorry, what?
Is Checkvist a free app or free software? Is it like a beta? What is it?
No, it was free for a really long time. It's still free. I have never paid for it, but there is now also, in addition, a pro version, which allows you to do cool stuff like cooler task sharing and like cooler email notifications and multitask copy and pasting and other stuff that's kind of cool, but I've never used or never seen the need to pay for the additional features. You can do everything that I've described and use all of the best practices without paying for the pro.
Cool.
All right. So we're going to do some hands-on. So what would you do in each of these scenarios? I'm going to pull up a scenario, and then using the best practices that we've been talking about, you guys tell me what you think we should do. So you receive an email from your boss saying your quarterly goals are due by the end of day Friday. What do you do?
That's a good question. Put it on the list of important things to get done for the week.
Great. So you go to your task list, and what do you put on there? How do you write it down?
I took the reminder for Thursday and put like you said like an action verb, so like do quarterly goals, due Friday, and have it as a reminder Thursday.
All right, so let's see.
Yeah. And you want to have like the first, I guess, subtask of that whole thing be the key part. So if like the first part of doing your quarterly goals is to review your current progress, it's all due Friday. You might put in your calendar review progress of quarterly goals on Tuesday at 10 a.m. And that way you get that first task done for sure that day, and then can move on to like put presentation together for Friday's meeting or whatever.
You peeps are all super sharp. I think that's the best set of answers I've got on the first one I've ever had. So yeah, that's all those kinds of things. One thing I'm realizing, Brian, you brought up a great point that this thing's probably not so clear. I probably need to say your proposed quarterly goals for the upcoming quarter, because that's just like the task to get not done. Not saying that you have to have all your goals done by the end of the quarter. I need to update that on my presentation. But the example I put down, just to reiterate what you guys have been talking about, is you'd write down a new task, and the task would be add quarterly goals into intelligence by Friday, and I would put that in Checkvist syntax as due today. So I'm going to look at that and see if I can get my goals figured out today so that I have them done by Friday. So next one, you receive an email from Acme Corp customer John Smith asking for a list of available studio script training dates. What would you do?
So you need to add that to your priority list and determine like how it fits in other priority. I guess so. So
what would be the task you would write down?
Gather training videos for whatever the customer's name was.
John Smith at Acme Corp. Yeah.
John Smith at Acme Corp.
Well, I
there we go.
First the list of available studio scripting and put it underneath like that's one of the tasks to help out this customer.
Absolutely. Both are good, valid responses. Both use different best practices that we talked about. So just to give an example, I wrote down here, write a new task, research available dates for training for John Smith. And I'm going to do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3. You send an email to John Smith with the final Acme BRD to review. BRD is Business Requirements Document in inContact speak. To be reviewed and approved. What would be the next action there?
Follow-up. For the follow-up reminder.
Yeah, so what would the follow-up task be? How would you write it down?
Probably follow up with John Smith about final Acme project on Thursday or whenever you need to, like, I don't know, whenever you, a day or two after you send it to him.
Yeah, so basically same thing. So write down a new task, follow up with John Smith about approving final BRD, and I'm going to check with them, follow up with them on Friday.
Right.
Okay, good. Okay, number 4, Bosk asks you in the hallway to create a simple summary project presentation about your recent Acme project. What do you do?
Well, if it's in the hallway, I'd probably send myself an email so that when I'm like at my desk, I'll have something to do. So I might send myself an email being like, add, what was the name of the task? But
create a simple summary presentation about your recent Acme project.
Correct. Add creation of summary to task list to make sure that, you know, I add that to the task list whenever I get back to my desk.
Fair enough. Or just another step beyond that is, why don't you just write into the email the actual task that you'll just copy over into your task list? So if that would be the case, what would be the actual task that you would write down?
Currently, it would be merge over to my exit, and then after that, it would be gather summary of presentation of current process of the Acme task list. I think was the task that he asked you about.
Something along those lines. So yeah, I just put down here, write a new task, create a summary presentation about Acme project, and I'm going to start that on Wednesday, or whatever. All right, so number 5. In a meeting with your manager, Matt assigns you to start a new internal training strategy project under their direction. What would be your next step? Sounds like everybody's distracted on something else.
No, I'm
yeah. I'm
turning.
So I'll just give you an example on this one. We'll keep going. So in a meeting with your manager, Matt assigns you to start a new internal training strategy project under their direction. So the thing would be you'd create a new task list for training strategy, because this is a project that you're doing, not just a task. So you create a new list. And then you would write a new task on that list that says, schedule project intake meeting with Matt. And I'm going to schedule that today to start working on this new internal training strategy project with Matt.
Especially because it says under their direction, you've got to get some more feedback from that dude.
Exactly. So you create a new task to represent that new project structure, and then you'd write a task on there to just do the next step, which is, I don't know, schedule a meeting with Matt and figure out what crap we're doing.
So for you, Ryan, would you create like a project in your smart sheet for training strategy, and then when you make the task in your checklist?
I wouldn't yet. At this point, if I were doing this, I would do the project intake with Matt, figure out what needs to be done. Is this something small that I can just handle in 5 or 6 tasks on a task list and be done with it? Or does this really merit needing a full project schedule? And if it really merits being a full project, like it's a cross-departmental, multi-quarter, predecessor relationship complex project, then yeah, I'd put a task on my list to create initial smart sheet project schedule. But if it's relatively small, I run lots of projects just from a task list and never actually even create a project schedule. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. It just kind of depends on how big it is. It sounds like the big point is just to get it documented correctly so that you can follow through and make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about applying the best practices, not necessarily as important about which tool you use.
Right.
All right, we got 3 more left, and I already got it at 1 o'clock, so I better go. Does anybody need to jump off at 1? Anybody got a hard deadline?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Well, I'll just hurry and finish up as fast as I can. So next one here, number 6. So after your intake meeting with Matt, you send off your meeting notes with the scope and your tasks for the new strategic project. So now what do we do?
Set up a follow-up with Matt for Friday to get his opinion on the project notes.
Potentially, yes. Any other thoughts?
Did you?
You're going to say something, Brian?
Oh, I was just going to say, because we just sent those to him, right?
Well, so Matt and I were in the meeting, and we talked about all the different tasks, and we have them documented in our meeting notes, and we just sent off the meeting notes and walked out of the room. So what do we do now?
You got to capture it in your own tasks.
What does that mean? So expound on that.
Well, you've got your meeting notes, and you've got that has the scope and your tasks for the new strategic project. So it sounds like you've got a project that's big enough to merit maybe using your smart sheet. And then maybe you just make a list of tasks related to the new strategic project that you set with Matt. And like if you wanted to go like the extra mile, you could even do what Brian's saying and set up a follow-up like a day or 2 later. So you've got your tasks, you've got your project, and you've got a follow-up with Matt.
You guys are awesome. Great answers. I didn't even have that many good ones. So I had one here. Just add all your tasks to the training strategy task list. So like what you were talking about, Josh. Take those meeting notes and take the tasks off of it and put it into your task list.
Right.
And then, yeah, creating the project schedule would be awesome. Creating follow-up tasks to work with them on it. Setting up a reoccurring meeting to be able to work with Matt on the project on a regular basis. There's lots of potential things that you could do. The point I was trying to get across on this one is taking notes of tasks in a meeting is great, but unless you take that step to put them into your task list, they're not going to do you any good. So just make sure you get stuff onto your task list when you come out of the meeting. And then number I don't know, 7, whatever this is. So Brian, you're driving home and thinking of something that you need to get done before your next weekly meeting on a project. What do you do?
Could you repeat that one?
Sure. So you're driving home and think of something you need to get done before your next weekly meeting on a project.
Oh, at that point, I'd probably send myself a text message so voice dictate, because we all know I like to do stuff while driving home. And so I'd probably send myself a text message saying, add project update to task list, or like set up a Google reminder being like, Google, remind me when I get home to add this to my task list, and that way I don't forget about it when I get home and get to, you know, say hello to my wife and all that jazz.
Right.
Exactly.
And forget about it while you're driving too.
Yeah, exactly. So I put one here, pull over and email yourself the new task to be added to your task list. This is basically what we talked about.
Yeah.
And finally,
you pull over.
Yeah, it's good to pull over, just saying.
Yeah, it's
oh my gosh,
where you're trying to be somewhere in a rush or you want to remember something and you're like, I need to find a way without texting to get this documented, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't have a great way to do it, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect at pulling over every time, but that's probably the right thing to do for what it's worth. So last one here, guys. So you arrive at your desk in the morning. What do you do?
What do we need to do in the morning?
Yeah, so you arrive at your desk in the morning. What happens next? What do you do?
Oh, yeah, so the first thing you do is pull out your task list and before you do your email and review them and prioritize them and whatnot.
Exactly. So you open up your task list or you do tasks view or whatever before checking your email to read, and then you read, update, or prioritize and schedule your day according to your task list. And that's really the hands-on portion. So really at this point, any other questions? Or the big question is, so what did you guys learn?
Well, I'm super stoked about that asterisk idea for reoccurring events. I thought that was a genius idea.
Glad to hear it. I found it works really well.
Yeah, that was one specific thing that I really liked that you said.
Sounds good. Brian, what about you? Anything that you learned that you liked?
Well, it reaffirmed to me what I already kind of knew, which was that lately I haven't been as good with my task list as I've been in the past. Like at 1-800, I did the whole make your task list and prioritize it in the order that you need to, and then you get the most important stuff done. And it seems like I lost that in my latest transition. So, yeah, I need to reestablish that again and probably reinvestigate some of the apps and whatnot, because so far I've just used like paper notebooks, generally speaking, and not like a digital one where it's easier to reprioritize them. I basically have had like a notebook and then I'll change the numbering next to the items as they go on.
Yeah, and it's doable. Some people prefer paper, and if you're willing to deal with the headaches of not being able to prioritize and needing to write things out each day as the tasks change, you can do it, but it's just not as efficient. But it sounds like you're at a great point right now where you can just try something new. So maybe you try Checkvist and try it out, or just try OneNote or something and see if it works out better for you. But yeah, just using the best practices is the most important thing. Just find a way to do task management.
Well, and I think I would really like to get the video presentation, because although I've heard the different names of everything of those coming home, I didn't get a chance to write them down or anything like that.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll send you a copy of the PowerPoint and the video recording so that you can look at them later.
Brilliant.
I'm really excited to check out Checkvist and Smartsheet, because I think that that Checkvist especially, I really liked how you had so many tasks, but like they brought them up in order of importance and made it like not even overwhelming. It was like, oh, I can do this later. Oh, this needs to be done today. Like it just was really cool to see how simple it was.
Yeah, I literally have hundreds, if not thousands, of tasks. Not all of which are important or need to be done. Some of them are just low enough priority I never even got to caring about archiving them. So it was a really great way to just make sure that you're only working on and prioritizing and focusing on what's important. It's the best tool I've ever seen to do that specific thing. That's why I use it.
That's one thing I'm super stoked.
Yeah. But by the way, Smartsheet does cost, I think it's like $10 a month, but it's totally worth it. And at work they pay for it, so it's not a big deal. But if you're looking for a good project management tool and don't want to deal with the behemoth that is Microsoft Project, Smartsheet is by far better. So I'd highly recommend that one, but there is a cost on that one. Any other things, Adam? Any thoughts from you? What did you learn?
I think it's better organization of how to handle tasks lists. I'm kind of the hub and a huge spoke of everything for what I have to do. So for me to look at it and say there's a better way to organize information and be able to disseminate and delegate out tasks, stuff like Smartsheet is actually kind of appealing in some aspects. But just having a good source of reference, I mean, Checkvist is something I'll dig into because I don't have anything other than a lot of sticky notes on my desk of lists of things to do. So
sticky notes is not an effective task management system, just saying.
It has worked great, but it has its downfalls.
Yep, it's true. Not as effective as it could be, I guess.
Yes, I need an upgrade, that's for sure, and it sounds like Checkvist would be a great resource for that, so I'm definitely going to dive into that and do more on it. Yeah, they're both good for different aspects, so I recommend highly both of them depending on the type of work you're doing and whether it's project or task related, so for what it's worth. Yeah,
hopefully this gave you guys some good ideas and good best practices from what I've learned and what we've done. If you guys have any more questions or want to dive into any more depth about any of these things, let me know. I'd be happy to talk about it. This is my passion, so yeah. With that, I'll give you a thanks, and I'll send out the recording. So thanks, everyone, for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, see you, bye.
See you, bye.
Hey, Josh, you still on?
You are currently